What's up, Shred Sexies? Welcome back. Death to the Fingers. Got some pushback, if you will, on the videos. Essentially, why should I bother learning recording? What does that have to do with learning guitar? And I'd turn around and be like, how do you develop a training platform to sort of maximize your creativity? And more importantly is that what better sort of training platform can you develop where you can literally deconstruct the individual parts of music and see them, in their sort of individualism rather than as the whole. Right? You're like listening to a piece of music and then instantly explode it out like an AutoCAD diagram where you see all the screws and everything else fitting together and all the rest of that stuff. And now you see it with respect to music. It's broken up, say, as SATB, which is soprano, alto, tenor, and bass. You know what I mean? That right there is an incredibly useful tool to be able to understand the broad mechanics of music and thus bring it under your control. And you'll notice like some sort of tried and true techniques, like using a dominant 7 chord as a turnaround before you get back to the verse or go into a chorus or something like that, as a tension-filled chord to drive movement to transition from one part to a new part. And that's what I'm talking about. Initially, it's just like play G7. You're like, okay, play G7. But when you start writing your own music and you're like, I should play a G7 here so I can create tension so I can move to this C major chord. Oh, and I'll tack on the G2 so I can tie these two things together. See what I'm saying? Like, as soon as you start thinking like that, well, all of a sudden, when it comes time to write the solo, you're not just being like, oh, I'll do G major pentatonic. You have choices because you've developed your mind enough to be able to take advantage of music principles, and you can see them in the constituent parts individually, and then as they start to combine with other elements. And there's that, like, learning how to do recordings is like our version of AutoCAD. And then there's the other half, which is like turning a 2D picture into a 3D picture. And that's like the difference between capturing a recording and then mixing it into something that people are like, damn, that's awesome. Right? So there's a bit of a learning curve there, if you will. But ultimately, the big takeaway here is that there is no better training platform than doing the recordings. And you don't actually have to be like, oh, I'm going to be the next CLA or something like that. That's Chris Lord Algie. Great producer, amazing from the 90s. Obviously worked on a bazillion records that went gold. But the point here is to sort of see it as you can be like, okay, I'm going to lay down my rhythm track here. And then as you did that, if you were really getting into it, you can kind of map it out on the DAW and then break down sections specifically to be like, over this particular chord that I used here, I want to try to find some sort of exotic scale to play over top of that, which gives you the opportunity to now exercise trial and error. Be like, if I were to play a melodic minor scale over this this chord here, the D7 sharp 9, which one would that be? You know what I mean? And then you sort of sit there and methodically go through it, and you're like, okay, here's the thing I was doing previous into this melodic minor scale. Does that work? Do I need to tweak it? And there it is. That's something that recording music offers you the opportunity to do. Otherwise, you're just going to be forced to look for that stuff on the internet. And trust me, it's not easy to find a backing track where you can just extend out a D7 sharp 9 chord for like 3 or 4 bars so that you can just give yourself enough time to be able to get up there and play this soloing tool. And then of course you can just start paring it down so it's much shorter in terms of just being a turnaround, and then just move to the next one. And then all of a sudden you've kind of start to understand how to use the melodic minor in the context of of a song and stuff like that. And that's the point. Most people are like, I'll just learn these scale shapes. You'll learn the scale shapes and stuff like that, but has to be synergy with the chord. Otherwise, you're just going to fall flat on your face. You'd be like, it doesn't work. And the problem there is you end up getting confused. And then you just become, disenfranchised with the idea, and you just don't do it anymore. So the melodic minor is kind of gets put up on a shelf and collects dust, which is a shame because it's a great tool, right? It's a really great tool. So you got to learn how to use it. And that's just it. This gives you the opportunity to be like, okay, well, now I can laser focus in on it. The next big thing is obviously, let's be real here, man. Music in general is dying. Like a lot of the old social, norms around bands and going to the bar, smoking cigarettes and drinking beers and watching live music and partying and stuff like that, they're just dying off. The kids don't do that stuff anymore. And because that's true, now you're seeing, the downstream effects, brick and mortar stores with guitar shops and music stores in general just kind of either closing down or being like, we need bankruptcy protection, right? The boutique market with respect to pedals, it collapsed to a large degree. Amps are kind of next on the chopping block because they're facing fierce competition with respect to the modelers. And trust me, I'll say it again. There is no substitute for a really good real world amp. None. A Marshall will blow any amp modeler away with a bit of, tweaking and some pedals. Now, that's like a $7,000 investment. So, more double than what it would cost to get a modeler, and not nearly as friendly with respect to recording. You can fudge a lot with recordings and really warm up the digital stuff and make it sound more realistic. But in a real world, let's play with the band kind of situation, there's no competition, right? So let's just get that out of the way. But having said that, for convenience and stuff like that, when you can pick up your entire guitar rig and put it in your carry-on bag and just jump on the plane, I'll let you do the math, right? Which way are you going, musician? Right? And that's just it. With the death of sort of the bar scene, the kids aren't really drinking alcohol anymore. They're just not really into it. There's no need for live music as much. And honestly, I've already talked about this in previous videos where you have Live Nation basically just wiping out the mom and pop stuff with respect to live venues and just gobbling up all the available venues themselves and turning them into Live Nation approved only venues with Live Nation approved bands. You might be seeing a centralization of power with live music, with just regular music. Look at, in the 80s, there were, who knows, man, like probably 100 labels. Now there's like 3. You know what I mean? Universal Music Group. That used to be 5 or 6 independent companies that did a whole variety of different types of music, and now it's been basically homogenized down, and you see the kind of mess we're in right now where it's just like this creative vacuum. It's not that these people aren't good. I watched a Sabrina Taylor one, or I don't know. Sorry, Carpenter. Sabrina Carpenter. Yes. And I'm like, it's not bad. I'm like, it's stupid. You know what I mean? Dancers and all this stuff. I just see it. I'm just like, this is Broadway crap. Get out of here. Scrap. You know what I mean? Spider-Man it. But then I saw this Olivia Rodrigo one where it was like the full band. That was better because obviously it had real musicians, but still, like, it's not exactly measuring up to like Van Halen Live Without a Net. You know what I mean? Like, that's the thing. As ridiculous as Eddie looks with his track pants on and all the rest of that stuff, and everybody else, and just the overtop nature of the band and the persona and everything else, when it comes down to just the music and the live environment and them just delivering, man, the difference is night and day. And that's what we're losing. We don't have these great bands anymore, or at least those bands are not being promoted to the point where it's inspiring people to get into music, which has this knock-on effect, which knocks the stores down, it knocks down the music industry, and blah, 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 blah. You know what I mean? It's like this vicious circle kind of situation. So in a lot of ways, the only way to survive as a musician in the future is going to be able to collaborate on the internet, and knowing how to record or sync up your DAW with OBS and stuff like that to run your rig through the internet so that you can either jam with people virtually, which would be pretty cool, or you could actually just cut tracks and send them back and forth and collaborate on songs with other artists. That would also be pretty useful. The tertiary sort of benefit, if you really took it seriously, is that there's always going to be a high demand for people who know how to mix real instruments, even if they come from a modeler, because it comes with its own issues when it comes to mixing and stuff like that. So if you get good enough, there's a lot of demand for people to be like, will you mix my music? And it's no joke. You can still make 25 grand for a month's worth of work. Right? So that's pretty good. You may only do that once or twice a year kind of situation, but still the thing is like to make an extra 25 or 50 grand, just pocket that on top of everything else, you know, or just do one when you're taking a month off in the summer or something like that, or mix it up over a period of time while you work at the same time until you transition to be doing this full time kind of thing, whatever. I mean, I wouldn't put all my eggs in one basket or get my hopes up or anything like that, but it is absolutely possible. And that's just it. There's always going to be way more musicians than people who know how to mix music and have the gear and the know-how. You know what I mean? There'll be musicians out there be like, listen, I can mix my music, but you can mix it betterer. And there you go. Right? So it also helps to sort of maximize your opportunity to have some sort of income stream in music. If you made $5,000 by mixing a local band's demo, well, there's an amp. I'd say that's a fair trade. You get the Marshall and they get a good mix, and then there'll be another band and be like, yeah, we want you to do it too. And you'll be like 6,500. And there's your pedal board. Right? And then somebody else shows up and they're like, oh, I want this. And then all of a sudden it's a brand new interface. You know what I mean? Top of the line, RME, UFX Fireface 3 or whatever it is. Or something from Antelope or whoever. Who knows? That's my point, is you never know when this thing actually will turn into something that's way more useful than your music skill, because we've devalued music to the point now where it's basically perceived as valueless. It's essential to life. People would go absolutely nuts if they didn't have access to music. But as far as their perceived value of it, it's just, it's like, I want to listen to your music for free on YouTube. And if you're not prepared to do that, then I'm just not listening to your music. And honestly, it's even worse than that, because now you're talking about people watching 1 minute snippets. So they're watching 1 minute worth of your music, if that at all. I mean, it was so prevalent at one point in time that they were writing music that was only 2 minutes long so that they could take advantage of the algorithm or whatever it is. Okay, so let's get real. And last but not least, of course, the final nail in the coffin and why you should absolutely move towards doing the recordings is AI. Now, I've seen the new Google sort of video editor and stuff like that. It's pretty crazy, right? So the next most obvious question is well, if this exists here with respect to the video, then you know that they're just going to go right directly to Suno or Udio or whatever platform it is that does the AI music and just whip something up there. I mean, why not? It's free. And you just type in a text prompt and there it is. Boom, done. And before you get all excited and stuff like that, this is Google's AI video one, obviously, because it's trained off, yeah, you guessed it, YouTube. And what else is on YouTube? The world's largest jukebox, basically a compilation of every form of music known to man. You can basically find it on YouTube. I had this woman tell me that this Ethiopian music was like the beginning of all like the best sounding music ever. And I'm just like, okay, I'll go check it out. No disrespect there, but I'm just like, yeah, no. Okay. Right. So I was just like shocked that it's actually on the internet. That's the thing is I'm listening to this song, if you want to call it that was written in the 500 BCE. Yeah. So yikes. And you can hear it on the YouTubes. So that's pretty nuts. And that's my point, is AI is basically going around and scraping all of that. And here's the thing is of course, I was thinking about this yesterday. I was remembering the first time I saw a Todd McFarlane piece of artwork. I think it was Spawn. And I was like, that's not real. That's a computer or whatever it is. You know what I mean? And then I found out it was an actual real human being that did that. I was just like, oh my God. I think he did Spider-Man too, which is another, you're just like, how? The thing is like guys like Todd McFarlane and countless other artists of that caliber, and there are a lot of them. There are some absolutely amazing artists out there. Those people were inspired by like comics and stuff like that and other people doing the visual arts. Well, now you can go type some words in and AI does basically a synthesis of that. In 2 years, it'll be like better than any of the comic book art we could ever produce. But it's not human. That's the thing that blew me away, was that it came from a human. Not that it was possible to make this. I'm just like, oh, it was a computer. It didn't actually impress me until I was like, that actually came from a human being. It's like when you see a sculpture made of marble or bronze and you actually sit there and look at it and you're just like, damn. It's like when you see a painting that's like 20 feet by like 40 feet, that's immaculate. And you're just like, how? We're talking about somebody's face that's the size of somebody's chest in real life. And then you have like 20 people on here. It's all perfectly proportioned. How do you do that, you mad lad? That's my thing. You know what I mean? Like, we're losing that. And it's the same with music. Look at the Instagram rot. It's just like more important to have like the perfect camera angle and some stupid stylized video than it is just to be like, I love music and I want to create cool music. You know what I mean? There's like this really weird looking South American dude. Like you'd see him on the street and think nothing of them. You'd be like, that guy's a dork. Really? If we're just being honest here. And then you put a guitar in this guy's hand and you're instantly humbled to the point of insignificance because the music that he can create is so amazing. You're just in awe. I don't care if you have music ability or not. You see this dude play, you're just like, fuck. Okay? That's kind of what I'm talking about. So AI is robbing us of that. And if it starts here with the videos and obviously the music, those two things being tied almost inextricably together, it's almost a foregone conclusion. They're just going to drive everybody into doing that. Oh, this is the coolest thing ever. And the kids will just start doing it because they're like, this is the new fandangled thing. But they don't realize that the information and knowledge being lost in the interim is going to be detrimental. You have to learn it all over again if you can. Do you ever think it was weird that one of those big music studios and stuff like that had a warehouse full of like these invaluable masters? You know, the physical copies of like some of the most iconic albums ever cut to tape and put on vinyl. And they just somehow it goes up in flames and burns to the ground. They're like, yeah, no, it's okay. We digitized them all, you know. But yeah, the physical ones, the ones that the actual artists themselves like vehemently fought bitterly to get back from the record companies and stuff like that. Oh yeah, no. We just kind of haphazardly had them in a warehouse and it burned down and now they're gone. You know what I mean? Like you put one and one together. That's what I'm talking about. These people are in it for the money and the business aspects. So they'll just utilize AI to completely flood the internet with as much content as necessary to drive public opinion to be like, this is cool. You should do it too. And they will. And it'll just be a massive impact. So if you're playing guitar or bass or drums and stuff like that, that would actually require a person to spend 10 or 15 years of practice acquiring the skill and stuff like that to really start to do something of significance, unless you happen to be, you know, one of the special ones or right place, right time. I'm not going to say that, you know, Nirvana is reinventing the wheel musically speaking, but you have to admit, like, as far as right place, right time, that band basically is the embodiment of that concept. Like, they just dropped with Smells Like Teen Spirit and just in one night, basically a month, wiped out the entirety of 80s metal. Just gone. Like Hiroshima gone. Like, wow. Ooh. Oh, and you listen to the music, you're like, yeah, it's okay and stuff like that, but it's, you know, it's nothing to write home to mom about. So, you know, that's the odd man out kind of situation. So what you really want to do is shoot for consistency, shoot for developing your own creative vision and opening up yourself to possibilities with VST instruments, with effects like granular delays and reverbs and stuff like that. You can create soundscapes. You can stream yourself to the internet to an audience of hundreds, if not tens of thousands. And that's going to be a very viable option as the brick and mortar stuff starts to collapse and people are looking for more interesting forms of music. They're going to turn to people that are going to be pioneering enough to be able to do these types of performances on the internet. When it was just like, oh, I can go down to the local club and see the band. These things don't fly that great on the internet because they're like, what's the point? I can just go see that on any Friday night. But once you can't see that on Friday night anymore, the only place that you can see it is now on the internet. And of course, you can turn that to your advantage if you wanted to. But my point being is it's like another opportunity. You can be an entire full band with a DAW, some basic recording knowledge, a few, like a $200 keyboard with some triggers. You could probably get that for like less than $50 if you just want the triggers themselves to be able to just trigger the various loops and whatnot and just have some projects opened and boom, you could sit there for easily an hour and entertain as many people as you want on the internet or just entertain yourself. You can develop a training platform. You can see the inner workings of music. And last but definitely not least is it might be the last viable option is this final synthesis between the human being and technology when it comes to music. And as much as I'm not really big into it, I mean, I love the recording and the process, but it will never replace the idea of getting together with the boys and just playing some music and stuff like that. It's just we can't find anybody in our town where has the skill level that can play at our level. And there it is. There's some good players, but they're not that good. And that's unfortunate because most people are just like, we don't want to invest the time. And they're already playing in 3 bands, the ones that are already pretty damn good. So you kind of get the idea here. Everything's starting to bunch up and whatnot. And we're just running out of people. We're running out of interest. The old ways and the old sort of like feeders and whatnot that used to sort of bring vitality to the scene and whatnot are just dying off. The bar scene's dead. The bars are closing up. Instagram makes a mockery of music and stuff like that by turning it into performative art. TikTok just doesn't care at all. It's about doing stupid dances and bouncing up and down so your chesticles basically flop around. You know what I mean? Like that's where we are as a society right now. So you're going to have to weather the storm. That's probably the last and, the end of the video here is you're going to have to weather the storm. Music will collapse. Traditional instruments will collapse. And then we'll go through like a 5 or 6 or 7 year stint where it's just like nobody cares. But then like everything, like superhero movies, it'll just wear off. And the kids will be like, I think it was cooler when I was hanging out with my friends and we were playing guitar at the campfire and stuff like that. Or, we had band camp or whatever it is, right? And so on and so forth. And it'll come back and then you'll be poised to basically, engage in that process again. But in the interim, what are you going to do? Not take full advantage of all the technology we have available to us? That doesn't make a lot of sense either. So jump on there and then just eat away at it slowly, methodically, in small little bits, so that over time, you actually develop skill rather than feeling like it has to be this Herculean effort right up front. That's the way to go about it. Just get a track down once. Connect your interface to the computer, fire up the DAW and get it configured. And when you're like, oh, that wasn't so bad, boom, plug your guitar in. Get a microphone, start doing that, start making some moves with the EQ and whatever else. Put it before, do it while you're recording, see how it works. You'd be surprised at how interesting that can get really quickly. And then all of a sudden you're like, man, that really cleaned up my guitar sound. It sounds so much better. And then you get more interested in practicing again. There's like all kinds of positive sort of feedback loops that happen when you just incorporate more tools rather than exclude them because you're like, well, I don't see the value. I didn't do really any recordings on my own. We did them in the early days and it was okay, but it wasn't as good as we could have made them because the gear wasn't there. But as soon as the computers got up to speed and the software got up to speed and I started getting into recording, obviously that was the thing. That was the game changer that just allowed me to go from being a pretty good guitar player to being a really badass musician. And you can do it too. And honestly, if you did it now, you'd do it in half the amount of time because there is no better training platform. I'm telling you right now, none. And no more interesting way to practice than sitting here and sort of going through the whole process of writing the rhythm tracks, coming up with the drum tracks, laying down the bass tracks, and then working on solos or doing other things. And there are a million other ways that you can fill in the music. It doesn't have to be with singing. If you're like, I don't sing then. Fill it up in other ways. Get creative. That's the whole point. I appreciate every single one of you. Never look a gift horse in the mouth. Look at something and be like, I could probably use that. And then use it. And when you start thinking like that, like solution-based, rather than be like, well, I don't see the advantage. Be like, well, there probably is an advantage to recording myself. I can start to look at things differently and arrange them differently because now all of a sudden I can just really methodically zoom in on this one part and lay it down and then create another part that blends with it perfectly, exactly as I hear it in my mind, rather than just trying to half-ass it in the moment while I'm playing to a YouTube backing track. You see what I mean? It gives me an opportunity to run over the idea again and again and again, like 5 or 10 times to sort of perfect it, and then boom, hit the red recording and you're off to the races. And that's the other thing. Once you hit record, you'll be like, okay, now the pressure's on, exactly the same way it is when you go out on stage. So trust me, there's a training platform there too to be like, just be able to deliver. You hit record and then you nail it in the first take. Win, win, win. Thanks for joining me. We'll see you in the next one.